I was thinking the other day, just thinking of like topics or something that we could talk about. We didn't have much prepared for this one, but this is a conversation we've definitely had before. So I want to say it was like Friday. Friday we were supposed to get some more snow, but luckily it didn't happen. But when I was there, I was thinking about like getting gas for generators, and we were preparing for if we lose power, which is like usually what we do
Hmm.
before it snows. And of course, I just, me, I'm always thinking about weird shit. I started thinking about like what would we do without electricity? Because like if we lose power, we have our generator, we fall back on that. But like, what if electricity just like fell out indefinitely? Like whatever situation you want to think of, like natural disaster, apocalyptic, like the government just shuts the grid off. Who knows?
Well,
But
I mean, aren't there? I mean, I would say that I think one of the first things that I'd invest in is figuring out a way to get a wood burning stove in our
yes,
house.
yep,
Because I think that was pretty common before
yeah,
electricity, is some sort of stove. And that thing heats your guys' cabin
yeah.
uh, in Vermont. It heats it really well.
Yep.
More than the floorboard heating does up there, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
And then you can kind of cook like off of it too and stuff. And then like if it is snowing and you need water, but definitely rain barrels. I want rain barrels now.
Yeah. Would have to like some states have stupid laws about
Yeah,
rain
they do.
barrels though. Like they say you can't collect the rain, which is preposterous to me.
That's so weird
That
to
is
me.
the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But that's kind of
But I
where
mean, like, if it's in our backyard, who's
I'm
really gonna know?
I'm glad you brought up the wood stove though, because that's exactly where my mind starts kind of going to when I was like, what if electricity was just gone? And I kind of like look at the layout that we have, and I started thinking of stuff that we would have to get or at least have on hand to like fall back on. Because obviously electricity has really only been around for a short period of time, and like humans and civilization still thrived and persisted without it. So if electricity was just gone, like I think people would think it would be a disaster for some people. But I think pretty quickly humanity would just be like, oh yeah, we can still do this. I mean, it would probably be pretty dark.
I
It wouldn't be the best, but I don't think things would completely fall apart. I think we would just fall back on those like previous technologies that we have that we don't
I
use anymore.
disagree.
You disagree? What do you think would
I
happen?
disagree because I feel like not even people our age weren't raised like us to spend most of our time outside
Yeah,
and to, do some harder work. And it,
yeah,
it, it is harder work and it would be a hard adjustment. And I do believe you and in our family, I confidently can say, yeah, we'd be fine without electricity. We would figure it out.
yeah.
But let me finish.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
But in today's world, because no electricity means no cell phones,
Hmm.
no internet,
Yep.
something that especially the youth today is so reliant on. Dude, I didn't have my first cell phone till high school. And to our parents, that's preposterous
Yeah.
because they didn't have those at all.
Hmm.
Like the coolest thing they had was like the car phones. You ever see one of those old cars that like has the phone in it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But and even then that was advanced for them. Or imagine the first computer your family had
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. Most people younger than us don't have that experience.
Yeah.
They never knew the box screen of stuff. And I'm just saying I think you have a lot more faith in humanity than I do.
Yeah. And that's what I was gonna say too. Is I was gonna say I think when given no other option, I think more people would adjust than I think you would realize. Like when it's like either die or adjust, I think most people are going to adjust. But
I think you're going to have I think it's going to be more of like a 60-40 split that could go either way.
yeah,
I think you're going to have a lot that are just like, nah, I'm done. I'm out. Then you're going to have the criminal because you're forgetting about the whole other thing of why do the work myself when because it makes crime a lot easier to get away with.
Oh, I know.
You don't have any of that electricity, that technology, that kind of stuff that they have nowadays.
Yeah. Can you imagine how easy it was to get away with murder in like the mid 1800s? You just had to
Yeah.
go to a different state. Like just go to a different state.
Yeah. Or imagine
You know, and then
claiming
leave.
property even before then.
Yeah.
Like, no, this land's mine. I killed the family that lived here first.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if you want my land, you're going to have to fight me for it.
Yeah. But anyway, backing off the more darker realities of the scenario. Like in this scenario, like electricity's not coming back. Like something happened, there's no more electricity, and we have to adjust. The three big things that I think right away would have to be our priorities is shelter, shelter, heat, and water. Those three things. You already brought up the wood stove. That would be that's an easily attainable thing. Like we could pick up like a little shitty wood stove somewhere and not even install it now, but just have it on hand if we needed it. Very easy to install.
One thing I'll add is something to be self-sufficient with food as well. Because no electricity, banks are going to be a mess.
Yeah.
Where's most our money?
Yeah, exactly.
And, how long is it going to be until that money is, out and
worthless.
And worthless. I think you would need a good setup for growing.
Yeah. Where we don't have much property. And you can grow in like the spring and stuff, but if it's the winter time, like you're gonna have to hunt. Like hunting would probably be the big like the mainstay for the food, even in like the summer and stuff like that.
Where we live though, I would almost try and like team up with our neighbors.
Oh, you'd have to.
Like because they have more property and that kind of stuff too. And it's not too many people, we're not like in the suburbs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not too many people. Team up where everyone's benefiting someone somehow.
Yeah.
Like we get all the chickens together. Now we have to consider some of those are going to be meat birds.
Yeah.
And some of those, and we're going to keep them breeding and we're going to save our eggs and all that fun stuff.
The big thing for that is, but if we do have meat birds, you have to think too, how are you feeding them?
You're growing.
Yeah, you'd have to grow.
You'd have to get a
store.
greenhouse.
Yeah.
Greenhouses you can build without electricity.
Yeah, you could. There's stuff you can grow in the winter too.
It'd be a lot harder, but it would be doable and definitely worth the work to keep your chickens fat, healthy, and ready to eat.
You'd also have to learn different techniques of like preserving the food too, because if you're storing it all, I guess the winter isn't too bad if it gets really cold, because you could freeze it. But I mean, you won't. Without electricity, you wouldn't have any refrigerators or anything anymore. Yeah,
you'd just dig like a cellar to where it naturally stays a little bit cooler.
You'd have to can
like fridge temperature. Can.
Yeah, you'd have to can stuff, and then you'd probably want to learn how to like dry and salt meats and stuff.
You're getting me into like doomsday prepper mode, which is what I always want to do. I want to have shelves of canned food.
Oh yeah,
that's like already canned. I want to get into canning. I want to have those nasty ready to eat meals like MREs, but they have other ones for doomsday preppers specifically.
Yeah.
They don't call it doomsday prepping, but they call it, rations for. But especially if you have a family, you should have that kind of stuff prepped away.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what could happen. I mean, even without internet, you're going to see some drastic changes in people. You're going to see a spike in crime. You're going to see people not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
And that's like, say you still have electricity, but you don't have internet now. Yeah. Your cards become obsolete, so you do need cash.
Your access to information, too, is now limited to, like, what you know or, like, what you have written down.
Honestly, if we're well suited off in the future, I wouldn't even mind investing in a piece of land. Doesn't even have to have a house on it.
Yeah.
I was driving by an empty lot the other day, and that's what I was thinking. I was like some wooded land was for sale, and it was like 10 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that wouldn't be bad. Say you never even build a house on it. it'd still be nice to own a chunk of land.
Yeah.
To like have a fallback source.
So yeah, all right. So we covered shelter. The shelter's an easy one. Like the house would still be here without electricity.
Yeah,
Like,
and
that's
it's
fine.
insulated. And trust me, we got plenty of blankets. Most of them smell like dog, but
And
we
then
have them.
we got the wood stove, so we have like the warmth, and then ideas for food, water. So we're on a well. The house is on a well right now, but that well is an electric pump. So without it, we can't get the water up out of the well. So
you could find a way to get it out.
very
with
easily.
a manual pump.
The manual pump. You'd either have to get a manual pump and would fit it onto the existing well we have now, and you'd just have to pump it the old-fashioned way, or you can drive another well.
Yeah.
Driving a well isn't that like difficult. Like you get basically you can buy these kits at like Home Depot and stuff. There's like this big iron thing, and you drive it into the ground, and then there's like these big stainless steel like pipes that you just connect to it, and you keep driving it, connect it, keep driving it, and then eventually it gets down there, and then at the top you attach one of those manual pumps.
Yeah, you know my family drills wells for like
really
a business. Yeah. More commercial, but yeah. That's what the distant side of my dad's family does.
But yeah, so that was another thing that we'd probably just want to have it on hand, even if we didn't like drive the well. Just have one of those like hand pump well kits like ready to go, like if we did need to like establish a new well. Because then once we have that well, I mean, getting the water out of there isn't too bad, and then I mean you just boil the water to like purify it and whatnot. And you know, you'd have the wood stove. The wood stove would have to be for everything. Like, would cook on it, would boil water on it. It would be for heat. You know, would have to use that a lot more. But yeah, food, water, shelter, warmth. And then I think with that, you could sustain quite a while. And as you said earlier, a lot of our energy would probably just day to day be going into like maintaining food.
Yeah.
Yeah, because once you have
food
the well,
and animals,
water's good. Yep. As long as you have some kind of system in place to maintain your food. But I don't want to like dive too deep into like the human factor into it, because then you're gonna have people that are gonna get like desperate for resources.
That's why I do think you need a community of people, and I think we're in an ideal area for a community of people.
Yeah.
Because right now it's all like everyone pretty much keeps to themselves, but friendly enough.
Yeah.
But like that's who I would want to be like in a community with. I can tell you a handful of people I know I wouldn't want to be in a community with.
Oh yeah.
And I won't say that obviously for self-incriminating reasons, I guess.
Yeah.
But I definitely know by because growing up, my parents are always talked about who you want in your foxhole. That's who they always talked. And they go, you want, somebody you can rely on.
Yeah.
Beyond emotionally. And like, I mean, that came to marriage, that came to the people you surrounded yourselves with, like, and it wasn't like a strict thing. It was just something I always had in the back of my mind. If I was in a foxhole with someone, who would I want it to be?
Yeah. You have to be able to carry your own weight.
Mm-hmm.
And then also have some to spare for others as well. Like if you have those handful of people that don't do anything and they're kind of just relying off of everybody else's work, that's where it kind of starts to fall apart.
And in a situation like this, you do need some sort of self-defense.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that goes without saying.
You do, just because, I mean...
Because,
criminal activity happens when there's... Like, it spikes whenever there's a big change.
Yeah.
Not even as big as losing internet or losing power. There's criminal activity spikes for less than that.
Yeah. And like we were just saying too, if you get all these resources together and you have a good system and you're sustaining, there's going to be people that aren't going to have those resources.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and this isn't like talking down on people that don't own a house, but like if you're living in an apartment and that happened, you're kind of fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have the resources available to you.
And then those
to do that stuff that I'm talking about.
yeah,
You know,
and then those that do have to be careful at who they accept into their community.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
because I love the idea of like non-cult communes, like where everyone works like to keep the food sources up, because there are those places, you know, it's like several houses on one plot of land, but the land is shared and it's communal. And I know most are cults, but I do like that aspect
Yeah.
of that kind of living, because everyone provides something. You can't just be like, oh yeah, we'll take in Joe, Bob, and Sue, but you know, Sue's 90 something years old and not doing much.
yeah,
And the other two can't do much either. And I don't know, you gotta be considerate, because you only have so much resources that can go around. And it's, are these people gonna benefit, or are they gonna just deplete your resources?
yeah. And I think that's a good point to make too, with not just carrying your own weight, but like what I mean by carrying your own weight is you as an individual have to contribute to the resources.
And I
like
think
you have to bring something in and bring something to the table that is useful.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's the area where I would have a difficult time, because I do genuinely just want to be helpful.
Yeah.
But I would have to take a step back and be like, okay, there's, you know, being helpful where it's like, hey, we can give you this food and then you got to be on your way and you can rest here for now, but you're not contributing. You know, it's something that I would definitely have to work on, because I would just open doors to, you know, anyone with a sad story or, but everyone's going to have sad stories. Like,
yeah,
that's my favorite part of any post-apocalyptic like show. And my favorite is still Jericho, because Jericho really does focus on the aspect of losing power and how they get it back,
power
like,
vacuums,
generators and stuff. And
so another interesting one too. You touched on it at the beginning of the conversation here, and I think this is something interesting to think about is the communication aspect too. Like, we're so reliant on electricity for communication right now, whether it be phones, but even if like cell phones and like say all the satellites fell out, we still have all the landlines and like the previous technology to fall back on. But in this scenario, all electricity's gone, so you can't fall back on the landlines, can't fall back on the phones. But we do have, before that, was the postal service. That would, and that's why I don't know, I've heard years ago, I haven't heard it so much now, people talking about like, you don't really need the postal service anymore because there's companies out there that are kind of doing a better job than they do anyway. But I think that kind of always, the postal service has to stay active, because that is our last like fail safe for like disseminating communication.
But is it gonna stay active? No, but I'm saying, but is it gonna stay active in a situation like this?
I would hope so. You would
hope but you can't guarantee it.
I would hope people would realize like, oh, that's our only like way for mass communication now, is like we would have to resort back to like passing letters.
Oh yeah.
Like, and I would hope that something like that, they would realize the value in the postal service and keeping that alive during a time like that, because that would be like the linchpin of keeping some kind of society together.
Yeah.
Is having some way to communicate over a large area in an environment, in a world that we're talking about, you know?
I don't know. I just don't have faith that it would hold up in a society that is maybe not at first, at least like at first, everyone's going to be worrying about themselves. How are you going to have employees for the postal service and that kind of stuff? Maybe later it would come down the road where they're like, okay, we need to enact this again. We need to get a postal service.
I think
maybe later, but I don't think we'd have it initially.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like the immediate like knee jerk would be like, okay, this isn't top of the priority list. But I think that would come up to like the top of the priorities pretty quickly.
But then you have to consider like, what if it doesn't?
Yeah.
What if it doesn't?
I mean, if it doesn't, then somebody else will just.
Then you have someone in your community as a messenger.
Yeah. Eventually, yeah, like
Like
communities would be
that's
like, okay, we need
we need
messengers.
messengers, yeah.
Yeah,
And at that point, you're not kind of thinking mass communication. You're thinking of just the communication between the people you need to have communication with.
yeah,
And honestly, the people we need to have communication with know where to find us.
yeah. Back in like the 1700s, when that was the main communication, like mass communication system, was like the
Hmm.
postal services.
Newspapers.
Yeah. But back then too, like think about a lot of the times if you were born like in a really, really rural area, like there was a lot of people out there that never left those towns.
Hmm.
Like that town and the surrounding towns around them was like where they spent their entire lives, and that was their entire world,
Hmm.
you know? And it would come back to that. Like your whole like global view would now just be like
The immediate 50
it
mile
would
radius within you.
yep, it would just be
Or
not even 50
less.
miles. It
Yeah.
would be like your town and maybe the surrounding towns would be like your whole world now,
Hmm.
you know?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. But I don't know. I love talking about stuff like this. It's fun to, you know, some people talk about like I think the appeal of like the whole like doomsday prepping and like having these conversations, it's not like you're not hoping this happens, you know?
No, it's the what if.
Yeah, it's like it's the what if. It's the kind of just putting yourself in that mindset and being like, okay, what could I do? How would I navigate those seas if that actually happened? You know? And you never know, like maybe having that like your world shrunk into something like that, maybe you would start to become happier. You know, eventually, especially if you like get a good community where you become stable, like
It depends on the
yeah,
area you're in for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Because you forget we're in the luxury of not being in a city. There's still a bunch of houses in a city where you can't, even if you own your house, you can't have certain
yeah.
amenities that you can out
I
here.
think if that happened, cities would be abandoned pretty quickly because you wouldn't have the infrastructure immediately available
But
to like
that's a lot
maintain
of
those.
population that's just in limbo now.
Yeah, that gets displaced, and then
And
then that
yeah,
comes into your thing like who you're gonna take in, where are these people gonna go?
yeah.
You know, it's crazy to think about. God forbid. Hopefully it never comes to that, but
Yeah, I
fun to
think
think
I
about.
think if I was in a situation like that, like where we say we lived like in a city area,
Yeah,
I would probably head for like the nearest like protected land, like national parks or like open space, and build a little shelter and just claim a little plot of land, and then start having all those things, the wood stove, that stuff, as best as I could.
yeah,
Um, because that is where I can think of where there'd be the most space with the most wildlife,
yeah,
are these open spaces and protected lands.
yeah.
That, that protection is going to go out the window for those. And, you know,
Like
that's,
I think if you're in that position and you were like someone from a city who got displaced and had to do that, immediately you have to be a minimalist.
oh, yeah.
Like even if it's like you and your family are gonna live in like a 10 by 10 little like shelter, like that's just what would like you would have to think about like what's the bare minimum I need to like not I mean
To
not
survive.
survive. Yeah, I guess survive, but to like but to thrive too. Because
Yeah.
surviving is good for a while, but you can't just survive and survive your whole life. You have to have like
Yeah.
a little wiggle room to where it's like if I keep doing this, it'll get better. You know, you have
Yeah.
to
And
have a
maybe you
little bit.
start with a small little shelter for
Yeah,
you and 10 family members, but then as the seasons change and you can get more supplies, you can always expand that.
yeah. There has to
But
be a little margin for growth in
yeah,
order to make it work. If you're just surviving and you're not like getting better or improving the situation at all, it's kind of like you need to like change your situation to like to make that even if it's a small margin of growth like that's kind of something you should aim for, because like if you're going out to like a national park and you have that shelter and you're just surviving and you're not getting any better, then
yeah,
I don't know how long you're gonna last like that. Fun stuff.
sure.
Sure. You seem stressed.
No,
No.
do think you have a little too much faith in humanity.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, I like to have faith in humanity, but at the same time, it's like I try to be optimistic, but realistically optimistic, you know?
I'm realistic,
What do you mean?
pessimist.
Yeah. Because, like,
Because I
honestly,
would
yeah.
rather plan for the worst.
Yeah. You plan for the worst, hope for the best. You know?
Yeah.
That's, I think, the way to go about it.
So I'm not even thinking of like what could go right. I'm thinking of first the survival aspect, because I'm not going to start worrying about thriving and growing until I know I can survive.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking of what everyone else could possibly do, and mostly how it would negatively impact and how I would mitigate that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's just my thought on it. Because I'd like to say we'd come together as a stronger community and
Yeah.
world, but
I mean, I think some people would, some people wouldn't. Like, it's not going to be. It's not going to be like one way or the other. You know, it would come down to like the immediate people you're with.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. Is that your only thought for today?
Yeah. We've had this discussion before, like one night when we were like drinking and it was just you and I, and we talked about this for hours.
Yeah.
And I remember after we did it, we were like, we should have did a podcast on that.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh yeah. So I've wanted to do something kind of like this for a while, and I thought today with like the snowstorm, I was like, this is perfect. This is a perfect one to do today.
I don't have any more thoughts on it.
Yeah, me either. I think that's a good one for that.